Hi guys, it's B again. Today I'll be drawing another one of my Pokemon characters, so let's just get straight into it. So for this video, I'll be drawing one of my Gallades, Robin. I do have another Glade, which is actually the uncle to this character, but let's just focus on Robin for now. Robin has quite childlike proportions since he is a child. I like to do this a lot with Pokemon where I change the proportions around a little bit, particularly to make them look more childlike since I have a lot of characters that are children. And before anyone complains that a Glade can't be a child because it's fully evolved, don't. The stage of the evolution that Pokemon's at makes no difference to how old it is. As far as Robin's character goes, the only reason he's even fully evolved is because he ate a lot of rare candy. Anyway, let's talk about the artwork itself for a little bit. First of all, this was a surprisingly difficult pose to draw. What I usually do when I want to do an interesting pose is I look up anime poses because they tend to be a lot more expressive and interesting for when you're drawing cartoon pictures. But the reference I was using was for a human. I went with a child so that there would be similar proportions, but it was still difficult because Robin's legs were nowhere near as skinny as this kid's legs. Robin's a thick boy. It can be difficult to draw Pokemon in interesting poses because it's hard to get references of those specific Pokemon in those poses, and if I do find a reference of a specific Pokemon in a specific pose, then I just feel like I'm copying it too much. So, using anime characters does make it a little bit easier since they're less realistic, they tend to have bigger heads, which fits my style. Honestly, trying to draw things in poses when they have massive heads is more difficult than you think. Just go and try and draw two big-headed characters hugging, it's hard. Anyway, after a few attempts, I did get a pose that I was happy with. It wasn't exactly what the reference was, but I didn't want to copy the reference exactly anyway, so that didn't matter. You will have seen in this video that I did erase the legs a few times and the arms, just trying to get that pose right. What you don't see is the two attempts I did before where I actually completely scrapped the drawing and started over. Something I should probably do is buy a light box so that I can just do all my sketches on scrap paper and then transfer it to my nice paper. Honestly, I don't know why I haven't done that yet. So add that to the to-do list of things I'll maybe eventually remember to do someday. Moving on. Once I'd finished the sketching and the line art, I moved on to the colours. I went ahead and picked out the colours before I started on the actual finished picture. What I went ahead and did is scan the picture in, printed another version of it off, and then did little test colourings on it. When designing a character or redesigning a character, I often do the colour testing digitally. It's honestly not that hard to come up with the colour schemes since Pokemon have colour schemes already. I just change around the shades of the colours and such. I already decided his colour scheme and did a digital version of it, but I needed to test which pencils would make those colours the best. His original design had sort of the standard Glade colours, but this design I wanted to go with a much darker green. I felt like this just looks a lot better on him. Honestly, I prefer darker or more muted and desaturated colours. I'm not really a fan of really bright neon saturated colours. They can look really good, but they're just not my preference. Glade as it is has the very basic saturated kind of colours, and I just wanted to take all that saturation down to something that I preferred. I also tried to limit the colours that I used over the entire piece, so I repeated the reds and the pinks throughout the background, as well as using lots of greens. I think I only used about 10 different colours on this whole picture, and lots of them repeat. There were 3 different shades of green. The red and the pink were kind of similar. I actually don't remember, but I think the blue I used in the sky was the same as the one I used on his blade. I also used yellow on Robin and even a little bit in the clouds just to tie the whole picture together and make it look like there's some light in the picture. As for the background on this picture, I was definitely being quite experimental. I've said before that I like backgrounds that are quite a contrast when you have a character that's drawn very neatly and the background is quite messy. I think it helps draw attention to the character more instead of bringing your attention too much to the background. I'm still quite new to drawing scenic backgrounds, but I'm happy with the ones I've been doing so far. I started on a picture a little bit ago of Robin's twin sister, and she's in a similar sort of background, but hers has like mountains in the back. Except in her picture, I decided to draw every single blade of grass. I still have more than half the background left to do. But since starting that picture and before starting this one, I saw another artist who was drawing a picture with grass. Their picture in particular was showing very tiny creatures in the grass, so they didn't want the grass to overshadow them. So what they did was just do a green background and then draw some individual blades of grass just to make it look more like grass. And I think this is a much better effect. It stops the background getting too busy, it's way easier to do, just looks a lot cleaner. So yeah, I've learned some things about backgrounds. Here's an idea. If anyone has any references for scenes that you think would look cool as a background, just a fairly simple background that I could draw a character on, like tweet them to me or something, and I'll see if I can use some of them as a reference next time I'm drawing. I try not to copy references exactly, but I definitely do need to use them. With backgrounds in particular, I can't do anything without a reference for some reason. Maybe because I never go outside and I don't know what it looks like. Hey, what can I say? I live in England. It's not that pretty. Usually what I'll do when I've done a background is I'll go over at the end with a fine liner and fix up the line art in any places where it's been covered up a bit. I didn't really do that with this picture. Sometimes I like the way that when you've blended the colours, it fades the line art out a little bit. It can make the character feel like they're more part of the picture. And honestly, fixing line art is only really very important when you're using acrylics and you can actually completely cover the line art. With the watercolour pencils, they just tend to fade it out a little bit and it makes a nice effect, so I didn't fix it too much. I know I did this in the last video, but I don't actually usually use a hairdryer to dry my artwork. I was getting a little bit impatient. I wanted to just get on with the picture, particularly because it was recording. I'm not sure if it was a good idea or not. It did make the picture sort of strangely crease in some places, but it did mean that it dried way faster and then I was able to finish the picture. A lot of the time with my artwork, I'll start sketching one day, then I'll leave it, and then at some point I'll do line art, and then eventually I'll start colouring, and one picture could take me weeks to finish. But since this is for a video, I went ahead and got it finished in 2 days. I could have done it in one, but honestly, the day that I did the sketch and the line art, I was kind of hating the picture. I'd had a bad day, I was stressed out, and then I couldn't get the pose right, and it was really upsetting me. So I just had to leave it for a while, but coming back the next day, I looked at it and I loved it, and I couldn't stop looking at it, so sometimes you just need to take a break. In this case, I just had to leave the picture for a day and then come back. I'm glad I left it for a day anyway, because in between that time I was able to pick out the colours so that I wasn't stressing about it while I was recording. I know one thing you're supposed to do when you're working with watercolours, which I assume applies to these watercolour pencils, is taping down the paper so that you don't get all those weird crinkles on the side where the paper starts curling up a little bit. I've never really been in the habit of doing this, maybe I should, but I just find that I turn the paper around too often and that keeping it still would really throw me off. Maybe I could tape it down to a book or something so that I could still turn it and have it taped down. Honestly, I kind of like the little... Is that weird? I like the little way the paper sort of curls a little bit. Maybe that's weird. Most people want all their pictures to be flat and neat and not crinkly, but I don't know, I kind of think it's a nice effect. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the design for the character. Robin's design started off not only with boring old regular Glade colours, but also pretty much just, he was just a regular Glade. The only unique features he had were his little scars, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. Robin's been my favorite character for like ages, and I just figured it was time to give him more of an interesting design. The main thing I wanted to change was his hair. I know it's a helmet, but just let's pretend it's hair, okay? Good. With my other characters from the Routes line, I tend to be more adventurous with changing hairstyles, but with Robin, for some reason, I just kept him with this standard Gallade helmet for ages. It's still a helmet, he's just restyled it to be spikier, so it's not got the same texture as hair, it's just looks more like hair. I had a bit of trouble trying to get a hairstyle that I liked. I knew I wanted it to be messy and sort of just a little bit uneven. I feel like that matches his character. I did a whole bunch of sketches on a piece of paper and I just wasn't happy with any of them. So in the end, what I ended up doing was just messaging one of my friends and being like, hey, draw Robin but with hair. And he did, and I didn't use his exact design, but it just gave me that idea, just like seeing someone else do it. Gave me the idea of what I wanted to do, and I came up with a hairstyle that I really like. Other than changing his colours and hairstyle, the only other change I really made was just a minor one. Gallades have obviously the blades on the elbows. You can't see this because of the positioning of the picture, but I've changed it so that those blades can retract fully into his elbows so that they don't get in the way, because I always found them so irritating and they just are very pointless in my opinion. Like, if you can retract them part way, you can retract them fully. Just get them out of the way. They're really irritating. The only time I'd want to draw them is if he's in battle or something. The rest of the time, I just don't, okay? It's annoying. Oh, and one other small change I made was changing the cape. It used to be red on the inside, but now it's just completely white. I just figured his design had too much red. I wanted to keep the red just for the small details, like his eyes, his little chest piece, his marks where his scars are, his blush, stuff like that. I didn't like having so much red in the design, so I just made it white. One other thing you can't really see, this hasn't changed since it was in his last design, but he does have a missing tooth. It's one of his front teeth is missing. Do Glades even have teeth? Well, mine do. As a character, Robin is physically weak, but he's very intelligent. He likes to invent things, and he can actually battle, but not on his own. Instead of using his actual moves, he creates weapons that do his moves for him. I didn't draw his weapons in this picture, but it wasn't really fitting since this is just a nice, chill, cute picture of him in the grass rather than ready for battle. He's invented weapons to use all sorts of moves, but his main four are for Earthquake, Poison Jab, Psycho Cut, and Close Combat, each of which have weapons which are designed based on a Pokemon that can learn that move. He's modified his Pokeball so that he can use it to carry his weapons when he's not using them. There's a lot more I could say regarding Robin as an inventor, but I don't think we'll cover that in this video. Maybe we'll talk about that some other time. Something I haven't explained yet, which actually ties into his backstory, is his scars. I didn't just shove them on there for no reason. You know, you gotta have a reason for a scar. It's not just to look edgy. I mean, I don't think you intend, if you sit in the field and wear a flower crown, I don't think you're intending to look edgy. So, yeah. Anyway, the first scar he has is the one on his eye. He's had that scar since he came out of his egg. Basically, instead of hatching naturally, he was forced out of his egg and therefore got injured in the process. He can't see out of that eye, the eye is completely blind. The other scar is the one on his sort of ear fin, which came from the same Pokemon who caused his first scar. This time he just attacked him basically and he ended up with a permanent mark on his ear fin. And as for his missing tooth, which you can't see, but I mentioned it before, that that didn't come from being attacked. That he was just eating an apple, and yeah, that happened. Not everything is edgy, okay? The one who caused the scars was a Weavile who basically stole Robin's egg and raised him for about 5 months. When I say raised, I mean he gave Robin whatever he wanted, because if Robin didn't get what he wanted, he screamed. Robin's real family found out about him later, and he's been living with them ever since. Robin's really close to the family he has with him, but ever since the Weavile that raised him abandoned him and then his dad left, he's become used to people abandoning him and doesn't trust people to stay. He particularly doesn't trust men, but he does get along well with his adopted father, Corey. And he also found a father figure in Professor Fur, which is one of my friend's characters. I won't usually mention other people's characters in these videos, but I feel like there is such a strong bond between these two that not mentioning him would be ridiculous, basically. Out of all my characters, I'd say Robin is the one who has the most character development and is the most interesting, with the most backstory, and the one I've basically given the most attention to. Anyway, I could ramble on about Robin for hours, but I think we'll wrap it up here. I mean, if anyone is interested in knowing more about him, then maybe I could do a sort of Q&A type video. I'll draw another picture of him and answer a bunch of questions anyone has about him. I think that could be an interesting idea, actually, if I introduce a character and then people can ask questions and I'll make a video to answer all the questions while I do maybe another drawing of it, maybe do a drawing relating to one of the questions. That would require quite a lot of viewers though, so that there'd be enough questions to make a whole video. But let me know your thoughts in the comments if you'd be interested in hearing more about Robin. Even though I don't have that many subscribers yet, I do find that the people who do watch my videos, I do get quite a few comments, and I really appreciate that. If you have any thoughts, then I always like reading the comments. I will reply to them as much as I can. One last thing before I wrap up the video, I'd just like to show some of the fan art that people have made for me. If you'd like to do fan art of Robin or any of my other characters, then that'd be really cool. Go ahead and send it to me on any of my social medias and I'll make sure I feature it in a video. If you've done fan art and it's not here and it wasn't in the last video, just know that it's being saved. At the moment, I've been posting them in order of when they were drawn, so if yours was drawn later, it'll be featured later. Basically, that's how I'm doing it. I will try to make sure that everything gets featured. Should be pretty easy. There's obviously not that much fan art just yet. I don't know how that'll work out in the future. If I start getting more fan art, maybe I'll have to feature it in more than just these videos, but we'll see. For now, I think I can manage. Anyway. I'm really pleased with this drawing. The video itself ended up being a bit longer than I intended. I actually ended up cutting out a lot of stuff. I wanted to say so much about Robin, but it just was dragging on. Like I said, if you'd like to see more, then maybe we'll do a follow-up video to this and I'll answer some questions about him. But for the most part, I want to do a different character in each video because I do have quite a lot to cover and I don't want to keep repeating the same ones. One quick thing I'd like to mention is that I am looking particularly at the moment to do some collabs, so if anyone's up for making a collab video, you have a similar type of channel you think it would fit the theme of mine, then let me know and we can arrange something. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and always triple safe.